Hello there, welcome back to Proper Unskimmed another time. Tonight's guest is Dr. Larry Troesh, who is an active teacher over in America, or in America if that's where you're listening to us. Larry, you've got plenty to say to us about the American system, and maybe we can compare it to the British system a little bit along the way. Would you like to introduce yourself, please, and give us a bit of your history?
Sure. Larry Troesh. I teach in Colorado, small town in Colorado, actually. We have a total of 500 maybe students, K through 12, actually. So
Right.
pretty small town. And
Yeah.
grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, started teaching there, went to Houston, Texas, and the inner city of Houston, which is an interesting, game there. And
Is
then
it?
came to a small town in Colorado and love it out here. It's a small
Yeah.
rural town. So.
Oh, brilliant. So about 500 pupils in your school in total. And does K-12 mean kindergarten all the way through to...
That is correct. Probably 5-year-olds to 17, 18-year-olds would be the
Yeah.
age range.
Yeah, wow. Is that... I can never keep up with the American system of middle school and everything like that. Can you just explain that to us, please? Probably make myself sound silly now, but...
No, sure.
What's the usual
So
system?
6th through 8th grade, right, is the middle school in America, and
Right.
then 9 through 12 is the high school. We don't really differentiate in high school. The electives that they can take is differentiated, but anybody can take anything, which has positive and negative, ramifications to it. But so that's the high school system here.
So is that anyone can take anything like the courses that they can pick and things like that?
That's right. Yeah, we do have, there's tracks for college, but anybody can take those college tracks still. We don't, we don't say, well, you haven't tested well enough to get into the college track system. So, we allow pretty much anybody that wants to take it into the college system.
That's good. So it's like quite opportunistic. That's what I'm used to in the school that I teach in. It's a good place for opportunity, and if the pupils want to have a go at a subject that they've never done before or anything like that, they can have a go at that, and we can help to pull them through it. So that's a positive thing, isn't it? That's really good. Do you have in America? Do they have like core subjects that you have to have, or is it entire?
They do. Their first
choice?
2 years, which would be what we call 9th and 10th, probably the same in there, basically 14, 15 up through 16. It's pretty regimented. If they are going to college, they can take AP courses, which gives them college credit if they can pass those
Right.
exams. We don't let the 14, 15-year-olds take it for the most part, unless they're just absolutely brilliant and they could probably
Yeah.
pass it. And then by the end of the sophomore year, they can start differentiating into the college track. But it's pretty regimented the first 2 years of what they can take, because the state requires certain things to graduate, and we try to get all those out of the way as much as possible the first 2 years.
All right. Yeah. So in the British system, then you have to do maths, English, and science that are core after what we call year 9. So that's sort of 14 years old, and then they've got 2 years to do the GCSEs. So they have to do the core subjects, maths, English, and science. But then after that, they can pick other subjects. So they have less subjects overall for the last 2 years of school. And then maybe they've picked like history and geography and tech or something like that, or sociology perhaps. So it's a slightly different system. And then some students, they can go at 16, they can go and start apprenticeships. You have to be in full-time education until you're 18, but you can start and go and do different apprenticeships and things like that. Or you can pick to stay on the academic route and go through A-levels or A-level equivalents. And then after that, you get an apprenticeship, or you could go to university after that as well. So at 16, there's a potential to sort of split off in Britain.
And I really think that's a better system that we have, to be honest, because, those that aren't going to college, we kind of push this college curriculum in the United States where really, electricians are making $150 an hour here.
Wow.
By 4 years. They're master electricians. It's very hard to make that, in any college degree, to be honest with you, in just 4 years. And they have a 4-year head start while you're going through that college curriculum. While you're in college, you're 4 years behind when you get started versus somebody coming right out of high school. I wish they had more of an apprenticeship. It's being pushed more and more within the state. Colorado is really kind of ahead of the game a little bit in trying to get those apprenticeships going. But the way the system is set up, they still got to pass those tests by the 12th grade year, and so they can't do 100% apprenticeship.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So how long have you been teaching for?
Oh my gosh, too long. 40 years, right at 40 years now.
40 years.
Started way back in 87, so I guess next year will be the 40-year mark.
How many different schools have you taught in?
Just 3, ironically.
3.
Just 2 in Houston. Actually 4, sorry. 2 in Houston, and then 2 in Colorado here, Colorado Springs. Again, first 15 years actually, was an inner city school in Houston, Texas, which is really interesting. I don't know what you would have equivalent in London, but it's imagine whatever the lower SES level is. That's pretty much where it started for 10 to 15 years. So it was a good time. And then I'm really at a small school now, which is really nice. The rural schools are really enjoyable. We have very few problems that the bigger schools have. And we still offer, a pretty decent amount of AP classes. So if they want to go to college, they have a decent gain out. My daughter took my classes actually,
all right.
And she went to college. So.
That's good. Was that a funny one, or was it enjoyable having your daughter in class?
I'll tell you a quick story. Their senior English teacher has every student write a thank you letter to one teacher that they felt like they connected through over the years. And I got one from a student one time that said, thank you for making my high school enjoyable. Thank you especially for the senior year. I think the quote was, your class were really rad. That was the quote. But anyways, I came to my daughter. So.
Oh, that's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one.
Was that anonymous until you figured it out?
It was until I saw it, and then she said, by the way, in case you don't know, this is your daughter. And so you can take all the teacher to your awards and mean nothing compared to that. So,
well, that's it. Yeah, it's nice. You get like thank you cards and stuff like that at the end of the year sometimes, and little notes and things. And it does mean a lot, doesn't it? It's a really
it really does. I mean, sometimes it's like this educational grenade. You throw it out there, and then years later, sometimes they come back and see if the educational grenade went off or not. And then sometimes, like this one, it was pretty immediate. But you see a lot of them afterwards. 5, 10 years later, they see you somewhere in the store. So, oh, thank you so much for what you did.
Yeah, that's class. At our school, it's there's a number of staff members are former pupils. So, I mean, that's such a good sort of sight, isn't it? That pupils have enjoyed the school so much that they want to come back and work there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the reason you do it in education. It's certainly not for the money.
No, it's not for the money. I say that to people. It's not a poor wage, but it's not worth it with the amount of work it is. But it is rewarding, though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So you've got a book, Larry. What's the title of your book?
So it's
Tell us about
The Changing Landscape of American Education. And education in the United States, and I imagine the same in Britain, it's changed dramatically over the last, I'd say 10, 20 years, especially in the last 5 years, really post-COVID, to be honest. Everything has changed, and the entitlement and political correctness has kind of taken over, and it runs everything. And there's some dangers to that if it's run amok, and we could talk about that later, but that really is the essence behind it. I kind of go into the history of where I think entitlement came from, and then how it affects the educational system. And it's just about every aspect of education that it goes into. But it really is true for society in general. It's not just education. Everywhere you look, the entitlement and political correctness drive the narrative. And so I think it's important to look at that. And then also I provide solutions too. Because it doesn't do any good to have a bunch of problems and no solutions to it. So I try to provide some simple common sense solutions to that.
Yeah, brilliant. So what sort of things have you noticed change then?
Well,
over 40 years, it's a long time, isn't it? But then you said
it is.
5, 10.
It started maybe 40 years ago, but really the last 10 and really post-COVID. I talked to my mom. She was also in education, started back in the 60s and taught till she was 85 years old.
No way.
A substitute teacher. That's doing something. And I asked her the other day, I said, well, what really has changed? She said, really, she thought the parents is what changed. It used to be if there was a problem in the classroom, the parent would come in and say, what can we do to fix this? Now, the email, of course, it's all email because nobody wants to talk face-to-face. And they come in, well, this is what you did to cause my child to go off. And, this is your problem here. And what are you going to do to fix it?
So it's that kind of flipped around approach.
It is.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? So something that I would tend to consider as well is outside, not interference, because that makes it sound like it's just the parents. But I think just society in general does have quite a big impact, doesn't it, on the way things run. What are your thoughts on social media having an impact on this?
Well, this is a real problem because the biggest problem with social media is it's a one-way form of communication. In other words, you send a social media out, a Facebook post or whatever, and you can turn that computer off. Well, you're not going to get any immediate feedback from that. It's not like face-to-face right now. If I say something that offends you, I'm going to know that. In social media, you can put it out there and then the next day. So you can send a nasty as Facebook as you want, all the rumors you want. Nobody's fact checking anything, and this is a real problem. We get this in the school sometimes, where parents have no idea of the situation itself, but feel like they do, and they send a Facebook post out into social media, and then we're doing damage control for the next week trying to solve it.
Yeah, one person's opinion goes out, or their version of events, and then it becomes sort of a problem, doesn't it?
It becomes their reality.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. We always mention social media around young people, don't we? But then you do see adults, maybe our age and things like that are really drawn into it as well, don't they? It's actually not just the youngsters. Maybe the youngsters
really
are
is.
possibly
I mean,
a bit more
that's the
savvy.
problem, right?
Yeah. Sure.
It's the phones, really. Is to be honest with you, that phone and that instant access to information. It really is a drug. If you look at that social media, the texting and so forth, it's instant gratification or instant acknowledgement of something that you've said. And you go to a restaurant somewhere, you look at couples sitting down, and nobody's talking to each other. They're all just texting right away and say, well, why don't you take a look out and talk to the person across from you? And nobody wants to do that. They'd rather be strolling through the Instagram or whatever it is.
Or even like a passenger sat in a car. Yeah, it is. Even we've been driving today. We've been off to the zoo today with the family, but you're driving along and you see a passenger in the car next to you, and they're just on the phone and doom scrolling or whatever. And you think, not to sound like a boring guy, but I thought, just look out the window and like you're going past trees and hills and somebody else in a different car, and there's scenery to see, and people aren't experiencing the world in the same way, are they? Or experiencing quite a lower percentage of it.
Too sometimes.
Well, goodness me, yeah. It is aggravating when you see that. I seen a guy on a video call once. I thought,
do you catch the car crash as it happens? Is it real time?
Live streaming to his Facebook, probably.
That's right.
And I think that, again, with adults and not just kids, with social media and people putting their opinions out there all the time, you almost end up with the sense that the world's swirling around you, and I've put this out and these people are commenting on me, and people are commenting on what I've put, and you get a bit of a me kind of approach. And it's difficult to say where it changes because, again, I don't want to talk too much about my own kind of schooling and things like that, but we think about youngsters being a little bit, in society, youngsters are seen as a little bit soft and things like that. But I think a lot of the kids that I experience, they kind of, in the same way that you and I might roll our eyes at a Facebook post or something like that, or Instagram post, I'm showing my disconnect with social media now by saying Facebook, I think, aren't I? But you can't maybe roll your eyes at it. And the kids are doing that as well. So it's difficult to touch on where the problem comes in, isn't it? Because, like I say, I hear people being negative, if down the pub or like family members that don't experience school and kids these days and everything. He said, they're all right.
Well, you really become disconnected from the interpersonal relationships that you form prior to all that social media coming out, right? In middle school, we actually had to shut down the computers and took the phones away. We just said you have to talk to each other because it was the most dead silent lunch of all time. They're just typing away, not a word anywhere. And so we finally just said, no, we're going to shut this down, and you're going to turn to your neighbor and talk to them because that's how you form those interpersonal relationships. And
it is.
As time goes along, that's not going to get any better unless we get away from that drug a little bit and we actually force ourselves to have those personal, to look up from that dinner table and see the person sitting across from you and say, okay, look, how was your day? Without texting it.
Just texting each other. In Britain, they're moving into phones being banned in schools now. And our schools, obviously, rolled with policy. And they've got these little pouches, and they have to put the phone in the pouch at the start. Again, it's magnetised, shut with a really strong magnet. And they carry that around all day.
Right.
And then,
the problem is that the parents also want that instant access to information. We point out it's kind of silly. We have a telephone in the room. An emergency, within 10 seconds, we can get them on the phone. But that's not fast enough in our current society. The parents say, no, I want instant, to be able to send that in case of emergency. Of course, it never is an emergency. It's what we're having for dinner tonight, right, is what the text is. That's the emergency.
Exactly,
But I wish, and more they're starting to do that here. But it's always tricky. The parents, are just, no, I want them to have that phone. So, but we're starting to do the same thing you are. Maybe you're a little ahead of the game here.
Maybe. I was joking with a youngster in the last year or so. Well, in fact, it was when the pods came in, and they said, "Sir, am I supposed to speak to my mum. I need to speak to my mum. Like, my phone's in this pouch. And I said, just go to the office. He went, what? I said, just if you go to the office, they'll let you use the phone and you can ring your mum.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. Don't worry. Just go for it. Don't worry about it. Just go and ask him.
Well, sometimes I tell them, we have them in the classroom in the pouch, and I'll say, you need to use the restroom, right? And we allow them to take the phone to restrooms. No, I don't really. I said, you really need to use the restroom, don't you? Oh, yeah, I get it. And then
Yeah.
I'll let them do it. I don't let them do it a lot, but if they really think it's an emergency, you can go to the restroom.
Yeah, it's being reasonable, isn't it? It's being reasonable.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One thing I've noticed in he sent me some links and things like that, is the idea of schooling being like almost like a customer service kind of thing now over there. What exactly do you mean by that? Because in Britain we had sort of what in sociology we call it the marketisation of education. It was the 1988 Education Act by Margaret Thatcher, and there's all sorts of things in that, such as Ofsted. I think you have like equivalent things to Ofsted. Ofsted for us is basically the government coming into schools and checking on things and rating things and keeping tabs on things. But other than that, it did kind of create this idea of parentocracy, where the pupils / parents had more emphasis on choice. But that is not. It's not choice on what's taught or how it's taught or anything like that because of the national curriculum, but more choice on which school to go to, which is the best school, which is the worst school. But that still only exists within a certain paradigm, because in a certain framework, because there's a net that's cast around the school, and if you fall within that geographical net, then you can go to that school, and it's only where there's crossover that you'd have much of a choice anyway. There are caveats to that, but basically that.
Yeah, we have the charter schools here, and the problem is the funding with the charter schools. They tend to be private here, so you have to raise the funds in terms of students. So it's hard to maintain those charter schools. They pay teachers a little less, so you're not going to get the greatest teacher. Some of them do it just for the love of it, but for the most part, they're going to go where the money's at. We have the same thing here, and but then again, you got the big public schools that. You look at it and you say, well, what's being pushed into large public schools? And a lot of this, what's in the book, is that entitlement and political correctness is being pushed out into public schools. And you have to kind of keep that in check a little bit, I think.
So how's that becoming a problem in schools over there? What does that look like?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you obviously have to watch. We don't have as much problem here. We're a pretty rural school, pretty conservative and so forth, so we don't have to. But I've known people to go into other schools that are much more progressive, so to speak. And boy, you really have to watch. And actually, what they're pushing into classroom is pretty interesting. You wonder where did the math, arithmetic go to, and reading and everything else, right? It's more of a political statement than it is the fundamentals.
The learning of facts and information. So you're saying that's what they're actually learning in the classroom is kind of the problem. Is also like the school policies a problem as well?
Yeah, it really is. This is where it really kind of kicks in, especially the entitlement. That the policies are such that really the emphasis has been put on the school itself, the teachers, the principals, and so forth, really being at fault for almost anything, to be honest with you. And it's up to them to prove that didn't happen. That was never the case 20, 30 years ago. It was if there was a problem there, it was a mutual thing. Everybody came together. Not so much anymore. So what happens is, especially behavior problems, and I write about this quite a bit in the book, that behavior, this is the number one reason teachers quit, is behavior. Because, they come out of college thinking, well, students are all going to be great and behaving. That's not exactly the case. And they get into it and say, and so you say, well, okay, they're misbehaving. I can send them to the office. They're going to deal with this. And they come right back into the classroom again because of political correctness and entitlement and to a certain extent being worried about the parents. And, and then all of a sudden everything falls apart because now 100% of your focus is on that one student. Well, the rest of the students are on their own. And so they're, you're depriving the education of 29 to get to handle the behavior problems of one. And that has to be looked at, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So can you give us an example of a reason why a kid might have been kicked out of class and then be sent back due to this like sort of political correctness
Yeah, I mean,
problem.
in the inner city schools, it's actually worse than where I'm at. But you could actually have profanity aimed toward a teacher within the
Yeah,
classroom, and they're back within 15 minutes, which is even worse because they come back in basically saying, "Well, they didn't do anything to me. What are you going to do about it?" This is why teachers are
yeah,
quitting right and left.
yeah, yeah,
It's run amok, and in all fairness, and I'm an administrator too, sometimes you get so overwhelmed you can't kick them all out. So what are you going to
no,
do about it? And it's your options are pretty limited nowadays, and so you're trying your best you can, to balance, the 15 kids that are outside your door.
yeah,
But I kind of point out in the book that if we went back to most schools have a three strikes and you're out policy, that if it's three major disruptions, you can be expelled. And when we say expelled, we say, well, we're going to remove their education. No, it's just a different form. It's an alternative school. It's online, especially online nowadays. If that was pushed through, I think your problems would kind of solve itself because you would have, I think everybody would look around and say, look, Johnny's not here anymore.
yeah,
Why is that? Well,
yeah,
because they're causing problems. I think I might just quiet down here a little bit.
yeah.
So
It's that kind of a message, isn't it?
it really is,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Do you have places in your school that are like what you might call internal exclusion as well?
We do. We have in-school suspensions. Well, we have an alternative school within our school, even a small rural school like
All
this.
right.
We have an alternative school that we can put them. Mostly it's to catch up on credits so they can graduate, but also if they're enough behavior problem, we can actually put them there. And that also
All
sends a
right.
message too, because the kids look
Yeah,
around and say, look, so-and-so's not here anymore. I
yeah,
say, yeah, I
yeah,
know.
yeah,
They're down the street.
yeah.
You might be next, so you might want to behave yourself, and they really do.
What length of time might a pupil be sent to the other internal place?
Well, that's a good question. We offer them the option to come back, but very seldom they because it's much more of a less structured environment. They actually do well, and not all of them sent are just behavior problems. Sometimes they just do well in a classroom with a teacher giving a lecture and so forth. They'd much
Yeah.
rather be online, and much more freedom to for lunch and everything else. That they stay there till they graduate. And I would say probably 90% of our students do that.
So it just maybe is actually a better fit for that pupil then, or student, you might say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. If you
yeah,
don't fit into the regular conventional system, you got the alternative system, and then of course online too. Now it's not nearly as good as in person, but
no, no.
it's an alternative.
It's a possibility. I mean, none of that really existed before COVID, did it? Well, it didn't. It
That's
didn't
right. Was it?
overleave anyway. Online teaching and things like that didn't really exist before the pandemic.
That's right. Yeah, I mean it did a
Yeah,
little bit, but yeah, the
yeah, a
pandemic
little bit. Yeah.
really took over, and we still have it here. We have a thing. It's a little bit political correctness. We get a half inch of snow here, we shut the entire school system down. There's no reason
All
why you
right.
couldn't drive on it, but it's so easy
Yeah,
to go to online. We just e-learning today. Kids get
yeah. Just
on
flip
and
to that.
it's read this paragraph, type it out. If they're slow at it, it takes them 3 hours to get through all their classes, and the rest
Yeah,
of the day is theirs. So
yeah,
they
yeah.
prefer it. Teachers like it better because all you're doing is just put something out there.
Just put something
Everybody
on.
seems to like it better, but there's
Yeah,
very little education going on there. It's
yeah.
not like a full
It's not
lesson
as
you have
good
to
as it.
prepare. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. What's the winter like there? Just so I can
Not too
try and
bad in
compare
Colorado
it.
Springs, kind of
Yeah,
where I'm at. On the other side of the Rocky Mountains, much more snow there. They get
yeah.
a couple 100 inches of snow a year. We get, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 at most. So it's really not too bad here. But again, this is a case where we just shut down schools no matter what. Even if it's too cold outside, well, it's too cold to go to
All
school.
right, really.
Yeah,
All
well,
right.
we go
There's
to
myths in
e-learning, right?
Britain.
Much easier.
Yeah, yeah. Just fire across. There's myths in Britain about temperature maximum and minimum, but I'm not really sure how realistic they are. We do have
You're
snow
right.
days sometimes, but
Right.
it does probably take quite a lot to actually close. Sometimes we open a little
We
bit
need to learn
later
something from you then.
and things like that. But we do
Hopefully you don't
close.
follow our path here. Just start shutting them all down for any reason.
Just shut everything. I think maybe the primary schools shut a little bit more commonly.
Yeah. Well,
The
especially
youngsters.
the cold. We worry about the smaller kids out in the cold.
Yeah.
When we're in Celsius, we're talking -10, something like that. Negative
That's
20.
cold.
That's getting cold.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a different
And so we
level
worry
then.
about them getting frostbite and stuff. High school kids, they should know better, but
Yeah,
younger
well,
ones maybe not so much. So we shut it down for the cold sometimes.
Yeah, again, that's a good comparison then, because over here you might be talking, if it's -7 and -8, we're like, oh my god, it's so cold, it's freezing, and then it doesn't really do it very much afterwards.
Right.
So yeah, that's a big difference then. Yeah, for sure. So going back to sort of political correctness and what have you, you started to talk, and I kind of butted in, I think, and started going off on a tangent like we talked about at the start as a teacher kind of thing. But what problems does that cause day to day then in school?
Well, political correctness is really about not offending. I mean, that's almost the definition of it, is just not to offend. But we can take that to whatever degree you want. So bullying is a good example. Bullying actually doesn't exist much anymore in schools. And the reason there's such consequences for it, for the kid doing the bullying, it's not like when we went to school. Sometimes they just get away with it. Not anymore. Yeah. But then the parents take that political correctness and say, well, I'm offended by the bullying, therefore Billy called Bobby a poo-poo head, and therefore I want him expelled from the school system. It's like, well, we really can't do that. But that's a good example that political correctness run amok. That because I'm offended by it, therefore, we going to kind of, I want you to do something about it, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting, that sentence, isn't it? Was to quote Ricky Gervais a little bit on this one, who I'm sure Ricky Gervais is quite big over there. I'm sure you know who he is. He said quite an interesting thing, and I might get it a little bit wrong, but he said the phrasing of things like that is really important, isn't it? Because rather than saying that's offensive as like a blanket phrase, it's more appropriate to say I'm offended by that, because offence is quite personal, isn't it? There might be even just a certain 4-letter word or something like that doesn't worry me, but it might offend you, and so it's not by proxy, like by definition, it's not offensive, is it? It's just proxy.
It really is, but this is a problem when you get out into the workforce. There's a lot of things that are going to offend you. You're going to be bullied in the workforce.
Yeah,
if that's your definition, somebody saying something
absolutely.
And kind of whatever. And so when we take that on in the school system and we push that any type of offense or any kind of bullying, whatever, is going to be, the helicopter parent, so to speak. We're not preparing them well to enter that workforce, and it's going to happen. And we're seeing more and more of parents jumping into. After they're 18 years old, jumping in to try to solve things, and that doesn't work well.
Yeah. So I'm going to go for another quote now. I'm going to go for Finding Nemo now. If you've seen Finding Nemo, there's a great bit where the daddy says something like, "Oh, I can't do that. Although I can't let anything happen to him." And then Dory, who's kind of the dozy fish that can't remember anything, she says, "Oh, that's weird because nothing will ever happen to him."
That's right. Like, great quote.
It's spot on, isn't it? That's exactly it.
Really
you do need to let things happen to your kids so they can learn. Now, obviously, I don't mean let your kid get bullied or anything like that, but we mean experiences, don't we? That
really
can offer
a good example
is,
not letting them go on playing outside. They don't nowadays. Parents won't let them go beyond line of sight.
Yeah.
Well, if that happens, what happens when you get lost and you're 17 years old? You've never been out of sight of somebody bringing you back. How are you going to solve that?
That's
so
it.
It's a good example of we all the protecting. We try to protect the kids, of course, but sometimes that runs amok, and that's where that political correctness and entitlement and so forth. That I'm going to protect them at all costs. And I think it's Angela Duckworth that wrote Free Range Kids. And she talks about that because she was the one in New York that let her kid ride. I think it was 8 years old, 9, ride the subway by herself. And of course, nothing happened. But she was labeled the worst mom in America, and she wrote a whole book on this. And it says really we're scaring ourselves to death. Really, for instance, do you have Halloween? Do you guys do Halloween?
Yeah.
So this idea of the drugs in the candy, right? So they're putting heroin in the candy, right? And so how many instances are there? Well, there's never been a documented instance. First of all, nobody's going to waste the money on heroin to put it into the kids, or grandma's going to stick needles in the apple just because she's gone off her rocker or something, But that's a good example of that it just run amok.
It's that moral panic then, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Moral panic. Yeah. Like I say, things don't actually need to happen for it to become one at all. In sociology, we'll talk about the killer clown epidemic, maybe in 2016 or something like that. If you remember that, do you remember that?
Yeah, I don't.
No. So basically, again, online social media sort of whips up a frenzy of there was examples of people dressing up as clowns with sort of fake knives, walking up and down streets and at night time and looking in people's windows and things like that for a joke, but to freak people out. It's probably not the best joke, but there it was. That is all it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But then it became this massive sort of frenzy online, and everyone was worried about the killer clowns around. And it was something that had started in the States, but then people over here were freaking out about it as well. And it's like there's no recorded issue of it. Nobody's been attacked by a clown or anything like that. It's just people are trying to freak people out, and then it
now all
everywhere.
the clowns are out of work, right? So
no one books a clown anymore. Yeah. So what else what other things from your book would you highlight as prominent things for us to think about?
Well, the special education is an interesting one. Back 20, 30, 40 years ago, you kind of didn't want to be labeled in special education. There was, you're ostracized a bit, and so forth. Nowadays, parents, and this has to do with the entitlement, parents are dying to get their kids into special education. They want them to be labeled. And the reason is that once you get that label, now the legal ramifications open up if the school doesn't give you what they want. So you want a new laptop for your kid. You say, well, you're depriving my student here of their special education needs, and if you don't give it, we're going to go through a lawsuit. Now, they're not going to win that lawsuit, but it's going to cost the school $100,000. So what are you going to do? You give them $1,000 laptop, or do you want a $100,000 lawsuit? And you'll give up. I mean, fortunately, the school I'm at, they just don't do that. But a lot of schools they do. It's just money-wise, it's just cheaper. But that feeds that entitlement loop, doesn't it? Because now they heard about their kid getting into special ed and getting all these, laptops and everything. And well, I want my kid in it too. And if you don't do well on a test, it's not because they didn't study. It's because of I have an interesting story. I was in a special education meeting one time, and this parent was going off on things that bothers their child. And she said, one of the things that really bothers them is flickering lights. Now, I'm not talking the kind that causes epilepsy. That's a real thing. But they're saying just flickering lights really sets them off. I am not kidding. She said, I want you to change every light bulb out in the school from non-fluorescent to whatever the new is, LED, right? And I said, that's going to cost about $1 million probably to go through its entire school. And she absolutely didn't care because that flickering upsets her child a little bit. That's a good example of that entitlement. And she really felt entitled that she should have all those light bulbs changed out, the entire light system changed out within a school.
Wow. So it was a claim that it was sort of a visual sort of problem, and it was impacting
that's why they're failing the test. Not because they didn't study, because the flickering lights bothers them up on the test. They can't possibly pass it. And, she threatened a lawsuit on it, forces she back down. But it's that crazy, though, on the entitlement that says that, well, my child is bothered by this, so therefore, you'll cave to whatever I say. And the more we cave to it, the more that feeds that entitlement. It's a loop that doesn't stop.
How common do you think that is sort of the version of parents sort of taking the mick a little bit? And
I would say it's very common.
Almost saying
not all. I'd say maybe 50. Well, I don't know, 50% is maybe high, but 20% not uncommon. Yeah, it is high. And there's a lot of really good parents. I don't want to just say that all of society's gone here. There's a lot of really good parents that if you have a problem, make a phone call home. They handle it. They don't feel entitled and so forth. Especially out here in rural, they're just hardworking farmers and so forth. Yeah. And they have no tolerance for not behaving themselves in
most
in
people
school
agree,
system.
but it's the loud minority of people that tend to behave.
It is,
isn't it?
But it's growing. Though is the problem, and unless something is done to stop that, that's going to continue taking over to the point that the educational system is going to be almost fucked. It's not going to. You're not going to get a decent education in school because all you're doing is catering to the entitlement and to the political correctness.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because there are so many youngsters who really do need that extra support and extra care to get through, to get school, with SEND, with special additional needs and disabilities. Mm-hmm. And every time that somebody kind of uses that unnecessarily, it takes something away from a child that really does need it.
It really does, because the problem here, and I'm sure you got the same problem there, the legal paperwork involved is unreal. I mean, bigger schools have somebody that does nothing but fill out paperwork. It becomes a bureaucracy almost of filling out paperwork. It's pages and pages thick. And then like you said, then the kid that really needs it is not going to get it because you're too busy filling out 500 pages of paperwork, and they're just kind of left on their own. So. Yeah, that's a good problem. Yeah,
and like worrying where the next lawsuit's going to come from and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, because you don't follow it. Those lawyers love the special because the argument is, well, my kids have special needs. You're not following them, in front of a jury somewhere. How about $3 million? Are you good with that?
Wow. and we say that's actually the school that would get slammed for that as well. If there was a lawsuit, it would be the school that has to cough up directly out of their own budget.
The school district probably, that's why they cave so much as they do, because the financial end of it, when you take a parent, if they find some lawyers willing to take it on for free pro bono, it can cost $100,000, $200,000 to that district, and they're not going to take too many of those; they'll go bust.
So how does funding work at like schools like yours. So in Britain, your school is a state school. We call it a state school, i.e. like run by the government entirely and funded by. So we get a pot of money per pupil as standard. But then if the child's got special educational needs, there's extra on that pot. If the child is pupil premium, which means that the family earns under a certain amount of money, there's more on the top of the pot, and that extra money can get spent on the extra stuff for that specific child. Is it similar?
It really is. Yeah, we have what we call a PPR, per pupil revenue, that we get per child. Like you said. And then it starts tacking on. It tends to be more at the federal level that gets tacked on. So free and reduced lunch is a good example. That's actually a federal program that comes in. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. Actually, I think billions of dollars for that program. So that's where the money starts to tack on, and which is kind of interesting. Though in the United States, we spend more per pupil revenue wise than any other country in the world, but yet we're 27th in the world in education scores, which is a whole other thing. It has to do more with our test and the curriculum, but also that just the amount of money that's coming in on just worthless stuff that I would really do without probably.
Yeah. Have you looked in your research into different countries then?
I did actually during my dissertation. I looked into how other countries fund it, and almost every other country has, like you have, a certain level you test into, and that provides money toward the college curriculum. And really, that's what I propose in the book. It'd be better if they actually allowed, you wouldn't even have to test in. You just open up the schools to be purely for the best and the brightest, and then the government can fund that. But something happens when you put the best and the brightest all into a room. You have it just all kind of happening. AP Classroom's the same way. These are really the best and the brightest, but then it's more than just the individuals. It's that collective genius of that group that went on to invent the atomic bomb or whatever. It rises well beyond the individual.
Yeah. So are a lot of the classes in your school mixed ability?
They are. But I mean, this is again a bit of a problem, because if you put a child that's struggling a little bit into a regular classroom, there's two choices there. The argument is, well, you just create multiple lesson plans. Well, nobody has time to spend 7 hours a day creating multiple lesson plans. So what you do is you put a para into what we call a para of support personnel into the room, and they help out, but you kind of lower the standards down a little bit, because you don't want to just fail them and not get a high school diploma. But then your top kids are really losing out on it, and that's where the biggest problem is. We spend something like 99 cents out of every dollar on our special education students and 1% on the gifted and talented. Well, who do you think's going to be running this country, in 20 years from now? We're spending 1% on those. It would be nice if we could almost pull those kids out. Give them a special, like you're going to be, heading things here, and you're the best and the brightest. Let's bring all that out within a classroom.
Yeah, for the most part, I can't say obviously all schools, certainly don't know that, but a lot of schools in Britain, the kids are setted into different groups. So you've got set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example, and that is mostly based on ability.
Really?
So
do parents have a say into that of which one they go? Because that's our problem with political correctness here. We tried to do that, yet every parent in the world is saying, well, this is that one that takes the highest, whatever that highest level is. Oh, my kid needs to be in that, and all create enough problems till you put them in there, and then you've deleted the whole system.
Yeah, not really. No, you might get some parents that maybe query it or call in and ask about it, and sometimes there might be minor changes made, but it would never be, jumping 2 sets or something like that without any data behind it. And for the most part, I think most departments in the school would say, look, your child has got these test scores and they are in the top 5 of the class. Maybe like we'll help them out with this and we'll help them out with that, and you can keep a tabs on them and see what their assessment score is next time, and then they'll be on the cards to move up into the next group. But again, other schools might be different. But
yeah.
So we do work with parents, but at the same time, for the betterment of the child.
You don't cater to it. I got you. Yeah. And I think that's probably the advantage of having a tested system, that there's not much argument after you've tested. You can say my kid really brilliant, but unless they really scored decently, and don't get me wrong, you could not score well and be a terrific artist or a musician, which we never seem to value in the society. But really, they could absolutely be brilliant. My daughter's one of them that was just kind of an average student, but she was an unbelievable musician and artist. And fortunately, she went now. But our society kind of pushes, no, no, you got to get into law school if you want to be somebody in society. So
Right.
therefore, the parents push them into that.
Yeah, yeah. Rather than excelling in what you're particularly good at in the first place. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough then. So what do you think the answer is then for the American system if you could
Well,
change it?
going back to a common sense approach, I hate to say it because what is common sense, right? But I think, first of all, not taking it from the parents, so to speak. And I'm not disparaging all parents. This is a kind of a small minority of parents pushing this, but saying, look, we're just not gonna do that. We're gonna go back to the reading, writing, the basics. Get the teachers out of political movements, right? You're there to teach those fundamentals, and and that's what we're gonna hire you for. And if you can't do that, if you just want to go into politics, then you can do podcasts, right? But whatever you like to do, but get them out of the education system and just go back to what we were before, and in the schools. And I think that 3 strike and you're out policy would be hugely advantageous, because now you don't have the behavior problems, and now you're the one student taking 99% of that teacher's attention away. That can be spread out now, and you have a much better system.
Yeah, of course. And kind of alluded to that, you're the qualified professional, aren't you? So you know how to do
Sometimes
that
the
job.
parents don't think that. Yeah,
no, well that's the point, though, isn't it?
The qualified professional. Yeah,
but it is the truth of it, though, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah,
it is the truth of it. Yeah, good. So I've just lost where I was. How do you see? I know that you're obviously mainstream school up until the end of childhood. Are you seeing differences on like college campuses? Changing over the years.
Yeah. It used to be that college campuses were a place for free expression on both sides. Right. That no longer is the case. Boy, you're in trouble especially if you're on the conservative side of it. It probably, if you reversed everything to the 1960s or earlier, if you're on the left side and you're holding these things, you'd probably ostracize a bit, and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's gotten far worse, I think. And it's a long discussion of where that came from. But basically, I believe it came from the late 60s, when the kind of the Woodstock movement ran out, basically, and said, well, what are we going to do? Well, they went into the colleges, realizing that these are pretty impressionable kids at 18 to 23 years old. We can really form things from there. But now they're into the deans and so forth of the colleges, so they have power. And I think that's where the revolution kind of ended up at today.
Yeah. It is a problem, isn't it? When the great thing about sort of democracy should be everyone being able to say what they want to say without worry of getting into trouble for it.
Especially college campuses. That should be the place that happens at, right?
It's the place, isn't it?
Of all places, it should be the liberation of the mind, to speak and so forth, and have discussion, open ideas, and that's been shut down huge.
Yeah. I mean, I did have it in my preparation here, but sorry. There's new frameworks in Britain anyway. I can't find the exact thing now, but it was they are starting to say now on university sort of campuses that make sure the university needs to make sure that people can speak freely without being sort of shouted down and things like that. So
interesting.
That's quite good to revert to a little bit of balance in case it was going off in the wrong direction a little bit.
Yeah, well, even speakers that come in, if they're on the very conservative side, sometimes they're not even allowed. It's almost violent. In some cases, it is violent of what happens to them. They just won't come on anymore. And so and that's dangerous to have a one-sided, view on things. That's the whole point of college, is to get both sides of it, and then you make the decision where you want to go from there. But to have a one side, is what is that promoting, anyways?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm a firm believer in the fact that you should listen to the opposite of what you perceive to believe in your own sort of mindset. So if a person's right-leaning, that's fine, but listen to the left as well, just to
I think that's
just
exactly correct. And
if you're left-leaning, listen to the right as well.
Political correctness says you can't do that. You've got to. If you offend me, therefore you're not allowed to have your opinion of it. And I think that's different than past years. We can hear both sides, at least at dinner time. You can disagree with it, but at least you're listening to the other side and say, well, I hear what you're saying, and I may not agree with it, but at least I hear it.
That's a good message to get to kids, isn't it? Like, if you and I don't agree with each other, so what? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter
agree
whatsoever.
to disagree, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then on a grand scale, we live in a democracy, and you can put it to the vote.
Mm-hmm.
like you said.
Yeah, let people decide. But it's even within our governmental system. It's more and more it's split. If you're one side or the other, there's very, very few crossovers of politicians anymore that'll vote the other side. It's almost straight line party 100% of the time, and that's a problem for all society.
Yeah. In the US sort of political arena, it's generally seen as like a two-party system, but it's not really a two-party. It's not. Is it technically not? But
well, he needs a third party is what we need here. Because then you got to form a coalition there, and you can't exactly take an extreme on either side. You got to get the third party involved in it. But it's so impossible to become, to try to get one third party going that there's been a few attempts at it. But that really is the key to it. Because I'm afraid with this entitlement and political correctness, the way it's going in another 10, 20 years, you don't even need people in Congress. You can just have a computer voting one way or the other because nobody's crossing over lines. So.
Yeah, and then it's just algorithmic then, isn't it? That's one thing I was going to lead to asking you, and you kind of started talking about it then. So could you tell us a little bit more about what you think the future might look like if we carry on down this path, as the first part of the question?
Well, this is exactly the problem. If the current system continues and entitlement political correctness keeps gaining ground, now you no longer have a dialogue. You no longer can listen even to the other side, right? Well, society starts to fall apart, right? Because what's in it for me? And that's really where the entitlement, what is it that I can gain from this? And there's historical precedent to that. You look at Rome, actually, toward the end. Very similar, right? It was just, the whole system was falling apart. And I'm afraid that's where we end up here, unless we started gaining some common ground somewhere, where we're at least willing to listen to the other side. But that has to start in the educational system. I believe that you need to promote both sides, have a voice in something. And, and if the parent doesn't like it, to stand up a little bit of ground with it and say, no, we're going to have an honest discussion on both sides here. And, you can get on Facebook if you want, but I really think that's a bit of a problem. But it's not unsolvable, though. We can start at the educational system, try to get a well-balanced approach to everything, and then that bleeds into the political system as they grow out and become the working members of society.
Yeah, and as you say, it's the youngsters that are the future. So if they can view the adults being like that and sharing views and having sort of discussions and debates and balancing things out, then that's the best way to learn sometimes, isn't it? By observing responsible people doing.
And unfortunately, they're the most impressionable of all people, right? Especially the younger they are. So you push an agenda of political correctness, entitlement. Well, that's going to carry forth, and it's going to be hard to change that later on because they're forming those opinions and so forth, and especially at a very young age, 5, 6, 7 years old. So if you could start at that age and have an open dialogue, then there's hope.
Yeah. There's always hope, I think.
I think so.
And that's the second part of my question. And on the more hopeful side, we kind of mentioned it along the way, but just to summarise a little bit, what sort of 2 or 3 small changes could you realistically make in the short term to help the long term?
Well, getting rid of, if I was to almost give one of them, I asked for 3, but one of them, it would be willing to listen. And you mentioned this, willing to listen to the other side. And that really needs to happen at the educational system, but throughout society as well, right?
Yeah.
You go to a grocery store, in your wherever department store, and you feel like you've been wrong, at least listen to the other side. And that would be the biggest change that I think you could make. And once we start to do that in a society, so, okay, I'm willing to to do that, and maybe things aren't going well in our society now, so maybe we look at an alternative to that, of going back a few years where we used to listen to both sides of things and respecting each other, right? I think you can, that probably is the biggest change you can make, I think, to get things solved.
Leave the echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What you again, kind of linking into social media a little bit, what are your thoughts on the Australian system of banning social media for anyone under 16?
Yeah, the problem is when you ban it, how are you going to enforce that ban? This is where it's going to be tricky because they're going to get it from somewhere. But I think that probably taking away the phones would be a good thing. That would be one, and then banning the social media. So at least within the hours of school hours, and having consequences if you violate that. That probably more than anything else, getting them back to at least having a conversation with each other, versus just buried in a phone somewhere.
Yeah, rather than getting rid of it entirely, just limit it and control it a little bit.
I think so. Yeah.
I had quite a good tactic from somebody recently, and one of the parents of the children, not from school, it was outside of school, sort of feeds the kid's algorithm. So the parent sends the kid, like nice, like heartwarming things like, cute black Labradors or something like that. And then the algorithm becomes cute black Labradors rather than anything
well, and
negative.
then with AI now, you got to watch what how far does this go with the computers and AI. If we can't have a dialogue anymore of what's going on, eventually AI is going to promote that dialogue. It's going to be the dialogue, and that's going to be a problem because But again, it's relatively simple to fix. You simply take that away. It's a drug for sure, right? It's
it is.
no different than any other drug. Pumping in that instant gratification. But once you take that away a little bit and force each other in society, to at least listen to the other side and have an honest conversation, that's what humanity is all about.
Yeah. AI is an interesting one, isn't it? It's kind of as scary as it is wonderful. Which I think I said about the internet 15 years ago.
That's right. Yeah, where's it in 15 years from now, right?
Where's it in 15 years from now? Because even just 2 or 3 years ago, it was nothing compared to what it is now. Just what's on your phone. Right? Never mind anything else. Yeah, it's intriguing. I think it's a decisive thing in the future, either way, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think COVID had a lot to do with that. When we were withdrawn from each other in society, then the computer and the Facebook and social media all took over, and that promoted, because we never got out of it. We liked the drug, and now nobody wants to talk on the phone anymore. I'll send you a text, and I'll get to that.
I'll send you a text. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you. Just before we start to wind down here, is there anything else in particular that you'd like to mention, sort of freely, without me directing?
No, I really appreciate you having me on. First of all, I don't know if I said that in the beginning, but I very, very much appreciate you having me on, and hopefully, maybe it promotes a bit of a dialogue between, the society. Maybe we can, start anyways with a little bit of open discussion and so forth, and try to at least recognize the political correctness and entitlement. And once we do that, then maybe we can get on a path that's positive and make for a better society.
Yeah, for sure. No, I really appreciate you being on, and it's been really interesting for me, obviously, as a teacher myself, to actually speak to another teacher in America, because you can read about different countries and you can read about different approaches, but it's different than actually hearing it from a person that's experiencing it, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't trust the media. I don't.
Well, exactly. Yeah,
what they're putting out is usually a very small percentage of what's actually happening, and until you have a conversation back and forth, which again is the whole point of being able to listen to another side of something, even if you don't agree to it. At least this conversation is extraordinarily important.
Yeah, 100%. I have one more question for you, which I'll let you know about beforehand. The question I ask at the end of each episode is, if you could speak one sentence that everyone in the world could hear, what would it be?
Boy, a sentence. I would say...
Well, take it wherever you want.
Right. Open the mind to different possibilities of what society can offer and what the other person is thinking and so forth.
Yeah.
That really is kind of key. If you can open the mind and be willing to listen, even if you don't agree, you don't have to agree at the end. But if you at least listen to that, then I think this political and correctness and entitlement kind of goes away a bit, and at least we get back to having at least a understanding of what the other person is thinking anyways.
Yeah.
So that would be it, to be willing to listen and open your mind to other possibilities.
Yeah, well, everyone listening without judging on both sides, on all sides. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Right, that's great. I've really enjoyed that, and thank you very much. Okay.
Well, thank you again for having me. This has been terrific. Really, I'd love to get over there sometime. It's on my huge bucket list of getting over to.
Maybe we can get some teacher training sorted, and I'll come to you, and you can come to me, and we'll share some ideas. We'll have a brew, definitely. Some fish and chips.
There you go.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much. All right, take care, Larry.
I appreciate you again.
Appreciate it. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.